In our last video, we created our layouts for the abbreviated sheet set that we are making. They were A-1 site plan, A-2 floor plans, A-3 roof plan, A-4 and 5 were elevations, and A-6 was wall sections. Now, right here as an example, we have our A-1 site plan layout. As you can see, there's certain elements and layers in there that we want to be able to turn off. The same thing applies to every sheet that we have. So as an example, this is A-2. It's cluttered with way too much information. Now, the way that we've created this project is we are creating everything in one location so that when it comes time to put it onto the layout sheets, we can control what we see or what we don't see by using layer controls. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to go sheet by sheet and turn off layers that we do not want to see, or actually change the state of that layer by either changing it, as an example, changing line weight from a 0.5 to a 0.05, or a continuous line type to a hidden to line type, or even changing potentially the transparency of certain layers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what we've got in model space, and what we have is everything drawn right in here. So this drawing right here represents not only our site plan but also our floor plan and our roof plan. Now, our elevations are separate items in here, so they'll be much easier to deal with in terms of what the visibility is on each sheet, as is going to be the section when we begin drawing that. So what we want to do is we want to take a look at how those layer controls work. So if we go up here to the Home tab under the Layers panel, let's click on Layer Properties, and what you can see is that there is one series of columns here that control not only the name of the layer that you're doing, but also whether it's on, whether it's frozen, whether it's locked, its color, line type, line weight, transparency, plot style, etc., including whether it plots or not, and some description if you happen to have a description. I'm going to go ahead and close that out, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the sheet now so you can see what the difference can be on this. Now I'm going to go ahead and open up the viewport, because what we're going to do is in this viewport, and only in this viewport, are we going to control our layers that are on, off, frozen, changed states, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the viewport. I'm going to go ahead and double click inside. Once again, I could have changed that by clicking paper or model in here. And let's take a look at how the layer properties manager has changed. So let's take a look at that. Here are the same series of columns that we've got in here, and they go to about here. But now all of a sudden we've got a second grouping of columns in here that represent, for each one of the layers, represents an alternative state that we can use to be able to change certain things. So we can turn things on and off if we don't want them. We can actually change them right here if we wanted to, but that gets a little bit tedious. What I like to do is I actually like to go into the drawing itself and begin to turn off or freeze the things that I do not want to see. So I've got my viewport locked, so I can actually zoom in a little bit into there. And let's see what I may not want to see on this viewport. And I'm going to start going back up to the layers. I'm going to freeze, and I definitely do not want to see my roof hatch going into there. I think this is one of the only things that we want to change. So if we take a look at this in the viewport, that roof hatch does not exist, but it has only been turned off on this viewport. So let's take a look at a model, and as you can see, the hatch is still in model space. So we have not affected the model space itself, only that viewport. Now, the nice thing about this is we can also do certain things that we want to maybe change the line types or the line weights. As an example, here we have our roof, which is a A roof layer. Let's take a look at what the layer properties are for the A roof layer. I'm going to go ahead and find that layer, which is down here. And if you take a look at it, it's all on. It's got a specific color. It's a continuous line weight. And it's got a line, continuous line type, and it's a line weight of 0.50. I'm going to go over here to the specific viewport changes. So besides not only being able to turn off the layers, as an example in the roof, what we can do is we can also adjust line types, line weights, transparency, etc. I don't really care too much about the color for that A roof layer, but I do want to change the continuous line type. I'm going to change it to hidden 2. And on this site plan, I don't want it to be such a thick line. I want it to be a much thinner line. So I'm going to go ahead and go all the way to 0.05. This is now changed. Let's see what has happened in the viewport. So now when we take a look at the viewport, you can tell a couple of things. Number one, the line type has changed from a continuous line type, and also the thickness of the line. The line weight of the line has also been adjusted here. So what we can do is we can now close this out. And let's go back and take a look at it in model space, and nothing has changed in model space at all. So what I do want to make sure is that that slope was also on. In the site plan here, I did want to turn it off. So let's look at A-roof slope. Okay, so it looks like it may be on right here. So what I definitely want to do is that slope, I want to be able to turn it off in that viewport. And I think what I just did is I actually turned it off in that specific viewport. As you can see, that slope arrow is no longer located. So this is a way that we can control line types and line weights per viewport. As an example, maybe we don't want these trees to be so bold. We also want to make sure that our line weights here for the edge of any paving areas or hardscapes are a little bit heavier than the hatching. The hatching is probably what we want to be the thinnest, because look at all the line work that we have in there. It could get very, very busy. But let's see another way that we can control this. I'm going to go ahead and open up the viewport one more time, and I'm going to click on this and find out what layer it is, and it's layer site plant. Now what we can do is here under properties, we could change a lot of things in there, but I would not ever touch this. This should always stay by layer because it becomes a little problem later on. Let's go ahead and go to layer properties, and let's go ahead and let's find L plant. If you notice, it's continuous with a line weight of 15.15 in model space. What I want to do is I want to come over in here, and I may want to change it and make it thinner. Let's change it to 0.05, but there's one other thing I want to control. I may want to control the transparency. So let's go ahead and let's put that at 50 and do OK, and let's see what happens to that layer. As you can tell, it's slightly grayed out and became thinner. So how do we verify that we can actually see the effect of that so that our pavers and our paver edges and everything else shows up a little bit more than the other ones? Well, for that, what we can do is we can actually go up to our plot icon in here. We're going to disregard most of this, just continue to plot a single sheet. As you can tell, these were already set up initially from our template, and then we modified the paper size and a few other items that we wanted to see. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and preview this and see what happens. As you can tell, this did not change. So what we need to do is let's go ahead and escape out of there, and let's take a look at, once again, at our settings right in here. If you look at your plot options here on the right, you notice that plot transparency was not turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on, and I'm going to preview it one more time. And now, as you can see, the trees are actually faded about 50%. So you can control layers substantially using that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do OK. for that. Actually, I'm not. I do not want to plot at this point. I'm going to go ahead and cancel. I'm going to make sure that I did keep that setting. So I am going to click on that, and I'm going to just say apply to layout, and then cancel out, and it should be laid out into there. I'm going to check it one more time, and as you can see, by applying to layout, I was able to turn it on. So let's try this one more time by going to our floor plan. And there's a number of things that we need to turn off here. So using the same procedure, I'm going to go ahead and start turning things off that I do not want to see here. So I'm going to open up my viewport, and I'm going to go to my Home tab in the Layers panel. I'm going to use Freeze again, and I want to turn all of this off. I don't want to see any of this in my floor plan. None of the site information. I don't want to see the roof hatching either. And I think this is pretty good what I want to see right at this point. So I still have this locked, so I can zoom in or out and double check a couple things in here. So it looks like I want to turn off a few things here. Still, I don't want to see my roof slope, so I'm going to turn that off. Let's see if the cricket is actually, it is on a separate layer. So I'm going to turn off that layer also. I'm not going to turn it off there because I want to make sure I'm turning it off in the viewport. So this chimney right in here, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off in the viewport and close that off. Now it doesn't get in the way right here. I'm going to go back in here, and I also want to be able to change the layer line type and the thickness for this roof portion right in here. I don't want it so thick so that it's competing with the walls in the drawing. So what I'm going to do is go back to layer properties, go back to the A roof layer, change it just as I did in the other one to hidden 2, and do a line type of 0.05. Close that out. I think that looks pretty good. We can always modify these later. I'm going to go ahead and close my viewport, and I've got my second one done here. Now let's go to the roof plan, and in this case there's a number of things that we do want to show that we didn't in the other ones. I'm going to open up my viewport. With the viewport open, that means my freeze commands here are now, and my turning on and off are specific to this viewport. So I'm going to go ahead and once again I'm going to turn off all the things that I do not want to see on. Now in this case I do want to see my hatch, my roof hatch, and also the slope arrows. I don't want to see my setbacks or my property line located into there. So now let's take a look and see what we want to be able to do. So let's take a look at some of the other layers that we want to select and see what we want to do with those. I'm going to turn off a few more layers. And again, this can get kind of specific in terms of what you want to be able to do. We could turn off almost everything in here and just leave the roof, or we can do a transparency modifications for most of our layers that we have in here, such as our A-door layers, our some of the other layers that we have in there. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to freeze almost everything, because what we did is we did a perimeter line going around our building that can represent our perimeter of our bearing conditions. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that, and I'm going to freeze everything. Now if this is not the way you want to work, we can do this a little bit differently. I'm going to leave my roof chimney location. That is my hearth. Go ahead and turn that off, turn the exterior walls off. This right in here, let's see what that is. That is some of there's our ceiling layers. It's probably a water heater. There's an interior column, and that looks relatively clean. I can leave this in here because that actually has something to do with the ceiling inside, but not really with the roof layout. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And let's go back out, see what that looks like. That looks pretty good right there for what we've got. And just using layer controls, I've been able to modify each one of these so that what you see is different and unique on each sheet that we've done. So let's take a look at our elevations. Our elevations, we really don't need to do anything on this. Once again, it is not a multiple sheet layout for this. What we had in the model space, if we go back to it, you can see that they were independent of a floor plan, roof plan, site plan overlays for each other. So they had both of them in here. Let's go back to those elevations. That's going to be pretty easy. And then we're going to do the same thing when we draw our section. It is going to be drawn independently of the floor plans, so we can not worry about doing too much in terms of layer states on and off.